Fellow colleagues and esteemed professors, welcome back. We are honored to host the Saudi Association of Neurological Surgery annual meeting for the second time. And for our guests who have endured long travels to be here with us today, welcome again and thank you. Our meeting today is a joint conference. It marks the 6th annual meeting of the SANS and the 5th conference by Horizons of Neurosurgery under the theme Today, Tomorrow, and Beyond. Looking into our past, this year is a special year as it marks the 25th anniversary of the University of Dammam Neurosurgery Training Fellowship, also previously known as KFU Fellowship, the first of its kind in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. We are proud to be the cornerstone of neurosurgery training in Saudi Arabia yesterday as much as we are today. Because to be involved in training and education is to be involved with the young, and from youth comes innovation. The responsibility to take neurosurgery beyond, as our theme implies, lies in all of us, and particularly my fellow aspiring residents. It is in us to make today's dream tomorrow's reality. As John Balderstone, the writer of the Dracula, once said, the superstitions of today are the scientific facts of tomorrow. Now, welcome with me to the stage a graduate from University of Dammam Neurosurgery Fellowship Program and a testimony to its success, the President of the conference, Dr. Abdulrahman Al-Anizi.
معالي مدير الجامعة دكتور عبد الله بن محمد الرويش، سعادة عميد الكلية الأستاذ الدكتور علي بن إبراهيم السلطان، سعادة رئيس الجمعية جمعية السعودية لجراحة المخ والأعصاب الأستاذ الدكتور زين العابدين جمجوم، زملاء الأعزاء الأخوة والأخوات، ضيوفنا الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إنه لمن دواعي السعادة والسرور أن يستضيف قسم جراحة المخ والأعصاب بجامعة الدمام المؤتمر السادس للجمعية السعودية لجراحة المخ والأعصاب والندوة السنوية الخامسة آفاق جراحة المخ والأعصاب، وذلك بالتنسيق مع العلاقات العامة ومع إدارة التدريب والشؤون الأكاديمية. إن الاجتماعات السابقة لآفاق جراحة المخ والأعصاب كانت متميزة بكل ما تعنيه الكلمة من حيث الحضور والتنظيم وجودة المحتوى، وحرصا منا على استمرار المستوى المتميز وتطوير الاجتماعات الدورية لآفاق جراحة المخ والأعصاب قمنا بتنظيم الاجتماع السادس للجمعية. كما أن هذا الاجتماع يوافق حدثا هاما جدا بالنسبة لنا في جامعة الدمام، وهو الاحتفال بالذكرى 25 على تأسيس زمالة جامعة الدمام في جراحة المخ والأعصاب، البرنامج التدريبي الأول في هذا المجال الحيوي على مستوى المملكة العربية السعودية ومنطقة الخليج العربي، والذي قام بتخريج كوكب من أعلام جراحة المخ والأعصاب في المملكة العربية السعودية ودول الخليج. كما يجب أن لا ننسى أنه من رحم هذا البرنامج ولد البورد السعودي في تخصص جراحة المخ والأعصاب. وحرصا منا على جعل هذا المؤتمر أكثر تميزا قمنا بإضافة 3 ندوات وورش عمل للمجالات ذات الصلة القوية في تخصصنا، وهي العناية المركزة والتمريض والعلاج الطبيعي. كما أننا قمنا بعمل دورة توعية بالأمس عن إصابات الرأس والعمود الفقري للمواطنين والمقيمين، وذلك إيمانا منا بأن خدمة الوطن والمواطنين هي واجب علينا. كما أننا قمنا بدعوة كوكبة من أشهر جراحي المخ والأعصاب في العالم كالأستاذ الدكتور للجم شيكر من الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، والأستاذ الدكتور مارك بيرنستين من كندا، والأستاذ الدكتور أيمن رمضان من سويسرا، والأستاذ الدكتور بيتر كارلسون من السويد، والأستاذ الدكتور بيتر أندرو من المملكة المتحدة، والأستاذ الدكتور لانغ من ألمانيا، والأستاذ الدكتور رومنر من الدنمارك، بالإضافة إلى كوكبة من الأساتذة الأفاضل من جمهورية مصر العربية وتونس والإمارات، فضلا عن مشاركة نخبة من أعلام جراحة المخ والأعصاب في مملكتنا الحبيبة. وأن من المؤشرات الأولى على نجاح مؤتمرنا هذا هو أن الأوراق العلمية التي قدمت للجنة المنظمة تجاوزت 80 ورقة علمية، وهذا هو الرقم الأعلى منذ تأسيس الجمعية، مما اضطرنا إلى تحويل عدد كبير منها على هيئة بوستر. أما بالنسبة للمتدربين في جراحة المخ والأعصاب فقد حرصنا أن تقدم جميع أوراقهم العلمية على شكل oral presentation، وهذا تشجيعا منا لهم. كما أريد أن أنوه على تطور الجمعية السعودية لجراحة المخ والأعصاب رغم حداثة عمرها، وهنا أريد أن أشيد بالإنجاز العظيم بتكوين لجنة جراحية المخ والأعصاب الشباب، وهي اللجنة الثامنة على مستوى العالم، وهذا مؤشر قوي على حب إخواننا وأخواتنا من المتدربين على دعم وتطوير الجمعية. كما أريد أن أنوه على الدور المتميز لإخواني أعضاء الجمعية، وأخص بالشكر أخي وأستاذي الأستاذ الدكتور زين العابدين جمجوم. وسيتم أيضا خلال هذا المؤتمر توقيع اتفاقية تعاون مشترك في تخصص جراحة المخ والأعصاب بين جامعة الدمام وجامعة القاهرة بجمهورية مصر العربية، بهدف تبادل الخبرات وعمل لقاءات علمية مشتركة، وكذلك إجراء البحوث التي من شأنها ارتقاء البحث العلمي لكلا الجامعتين. وهنا أريد أن أتقدم بخالص الشكر والامتنان للأخوة الأفاضل من جامعة القاهرة، وهم الأستاذ الدكتور الجوهري محمد الجوهري رئيس قسم جراحة المخ والأعصاب، الأستاذ الدكتور أحمد زهدي وكيل كلية الطب للدراسات العليا، الأستاذ الدكتور مصطفى قطب وخالد بسيم وباسم أيوب على مبادرتهم الكريمة لعقد هذه الاتفاقية. وفي الختام أحب أن أشكر كل من معالي مدير الجامعة الدكتور عبد الله بن محمد الرويش على دعمه السخي والمتواصل لكل الندوات الطبية عامة وندوات جراحة المخ والأعصاب خاصة، إدارة الشؤون الأكاديمية والتدريب والعلاقات العامة على دورهم الكبير في تنظيم مثل هذه الندوات، كل المشاركين في هذه الندوة، شركات الداعمة، وهنا أخص بالشكر شركة الخليج الطبية، شركة الأمين، شركة جونسون اند جونسون، شركة الفيصلية، شركة النزهة، شركة زمو، شركة باناجة، شركة الصالحية، شركة ميدكس، شركة الإيوان، شركة غلاسكو، وشركة تمر. President of University of Dammam, His Excellency Dr. Abdullah Rubish, to the Dean of the Medical College, Professor Ali Sultan, to the members of the Saudi Association of Neurological Surgeons, our distinguished international, national, and local guest speakers, and to all who come here to witness and participate in this highly scientific activity, my very warm welcome to all of you. I stand here today firstly representing the organizing committee who took all the troubles to ensure the success of this event. Secondly, and most importantly, on behalf of the authority, the pillars, the founder, and each and every part of the University of Dammam Fellowship Program in neurosurgery since it started in 1987. It makes me feel very proud and honored to be once part of this program as a trainee and now as a program director, taking the lead of teaching, training, and shaping our future academic neurosurgeon under the brilliant and supportive umbrella of the Faculty of Medicine, University of Dammam. This special scientific event is compact with several pre-conference and parallel activities in collaboration with the Saudi Association of Neurological Surgeons, Department of Anesthesia, Department of Nursing, Department of Physiotherapy Service of King Fahd Hospital of the University. This cooperative work with such departments highlight the importance of their part in quality, in teaching, and effective neurosurgical care for our patients. This is also the second time that we hold the Saudi Association of Neurological Surgeons annual meeting in our hosting. And as a Vice President of this prestigious association, I humbly welcome once again all the members of the society, headed by Professor Zain Al-Abidin Jamjoom, and joining for the first time the young Saudi neurosurgery group headed by Dr. Ali Al-Jazeer. I also feel so privileged to welcome our main international guest speakers, such as Professor Leligam Shaker, my mentor and friend Mark Bernstein, Professor Mark Bernstein, Professor Bent Carlson, Professor Ayman Ramadan, Professor Lang, Professor Peter Andrew, and Professor Rumner. I would like to thank you all for accepting our invitation to take part and bring into this meeting your most valued contributions. We hope that your stay here in Saudi Arabia will be a fruitful and memorable one for you. Of worth mentioning, also during this very special event, a group of delegates from Egypt, headed by Professor Al-Johri, Professor Ahmed Zuhdi, Professor Mustafa Qutb, Professor Khalid Basim, and Professor Basim Ayoub, are joining us not only to share a talk, but to initiate a collaboration between Cairo University and University of Dammam with regard to the post-training between these two institutions. My gratitude to all of you on this initiative and I hope that this will end up with a fruitful, beneficial, and lasting professional relationship between our universities. The Department of Neurosurgery, since it started 25 years ago, is committed in providing the best possible teaching, training, and exchange of experience and learning in the vast field of neurosurgical problems and related disciplines. We are more than happy and proud to host this event. This ground is a great opportunity for learning from each other. Our hopes are high that at the end of a conclusion of this event, all people here present will go back to their origin gainfully achieved more than what they are expected for. Again, to all of you, my warm welcome, and wish that you will have a pleasurable and a fruitful stay during this conference. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abdurrahman, for this speech. Now, a warm welcoming speech from a solid contributor to the advancement of neurosurgery in our country, the President and co-founder of the Saudi Association of Neurological Surgery, Dr. Zain Al-Abidin Jamjoom.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. معالي الأستاذ الدكتور عبد الله الربيش مدير جامعة الدمام، سعادة الدكتور علي السلطان عميد كلية الطب، سعادة الأستاذ الدكتور عبد الرحمن العنزي رئيس قسم جراحة المخ والأعصاب بجامعة الدمام ورئيس المؤتمر، سعادة ضيوفنا المتحدثين الدوليين، سعادة الزملاء السيدات والسادة الحضور، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني جدا بالإصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن الجمعية السعودية لجراحة المخ والأعصاب أن أرحب بكم أجمل ترحيب في هذا المؤتمر السنوي السادس للجمعية، ويطيب لي أن أتقدم بالكثير من الشكر والتقدير إلى الإخوة الزملاء في قسم جراحة المخ والأعصاب بجامعة الدمام على مبادرتهم الكريمة وجهودهم الكبيرة لاستضافة وتنظيم هذا المؤتمر وتحمل كل ما يرتبط به من تعب وعناء. وأخص بالذكر هنا اللجان المنظمة للمؤتمر، وعلى رأسهم الأستاذ الدكتور عبد الرحمن العنزي والأستاذ الدكتور أحمد عمار. وهذه هي المرة الثانية خلال 3 سنوات التي يصر فيها الإخوة الزملاء في هذا القسم على تحمل هذه المسؤولية، إذ سبق لهم القيام بعقد المؤتمر السنوي الثالث للجمعية في عام 2009. وهذا يدل على إيمانهم العميق بأهمية هذه المؤتمرات العلمية كوسيلة لا غنى عنها للتبادل المعرفي وتحفيز الفكر العلمي والتطوير المستمر للممارسة العملية لجراحة المخ والأعصاب، خاصة في ضوء الزيادة المضطردة في أعداد المتدربين والمشتغلين في هذا الاختصاص في المملكة. ولا بد لي في هذا السياق من الإشادة أيضا بالدعم الكبير الذي يقدمه الإخوة الزملاء في هذا القسم للجمعية من خلال مشاركتهم الفاعلة في أعمال الجمعية الأخرى وتعاونهم البناء لتجاوز المصاعب والتحديات التي تواجهها الجمعية. يتضمن هذا المؤتمر كما هو موضح في برنامجه العلمي أكثر من 80 ورقة بحث تغطي مجالات مختلفة في جراحة المخ والأعصاب، تمتد من جراحة قاع الجمجمة إلى جراحات العمود الفقري والأوعية الدموية، إلى جانب الجراحة الشعاعية وجراحة المناظير. ولأن مستقبل جراحة المخ والأعصاب ومستوى الخدمة الطبية المقدمة للمرضى يرتبط بدرجة كبيرة بجودة التدريب والتعليم، فقد أولى منظمو المؤتمر اهتماما خاصا بهذا الموضوع وخصصوا له الجلسة الافتتاحية، حيث تعقد مقارنة بين التدريب في الداخل ونظيره في الخارج. ومن اللافت للنظر أيضا المساحة الكبيرة في البرنامج العلمي التي خصصت لأبحاث جراحي الأعصاب الشباب، مما يعكس إدراكا عميقا بأهمية دعم الجيل الجديد من الجراحين وإشراكهم في الحراك العلمي المستمر في هذا التخصص. يصاحب هذا المؤتمر نشاطات أخرى تستحق التقدير والثناء، فإلى جانب ورشة عمل للمتدربين حول مراقبة ضغط الرأس، كانت هناك ندوة عامة للمجتمع للتعريف بإصابات الرأس، وهذه هي المرة الأولى في تاريخ الجمعية التي تنظم فيها ندوة من هذا النوع لتثقيف الناس بالعواقب الوخيمة لإصابات الرأس وكيفية الوقاية منها. بالإضافة إلى ذلك هناك ندوتان للتمريض والعلاج الطبيعي العصبي، وهما أيضا من المبادرات الجديدة التي تهدف إلى تعزيز التعاون مع التخصصات العصبية المساندة بهدف تحسين مستويات الرعاية المقدمة لمرضى جراحة المخ والأعصاب. ختاماً أوجه الشكر مرة أخرى لكل من شارك في إنجاح هذا المؤتمر، والأخص إدارة جامعة الدمام، ولا يفوتني أيضاً أن أقدم الثناء والتقدير إلى جميع الشركات المؤسسات الراعية التي ما كان لهذا المؤتمر أن يتحقق بدون دعمها ومشاركتها، وأدعو المشاركين والحضور إلى زيارة مواقعهم في المعرض المصاحب للمؤتمر. Just a few words to our international guest speakers. Dr. Shekhar from USA, Dr. Bernstein from Canada, Dr. Carlson from Sweden, Dr. Ramadan from Switzerland, Dr. Andrews from United Kingdom, and Dr. Lang from Germany. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you here in Saudi Arabia on behalf of the Saudi Association of Neurological Surgery. We highly appreciate your contribution to our conference and wish you a good and pleasant stay in Al-Khobar, and hopefully, inshallah, a safe return home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jamjoom. Next, a word from the President of University of Dammam, who took the time to honor us with his presence today, Dr. Abdullah Rubesh.
الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. لضيوف الجامعة الكرام، الإخوة الزملاء، زميلات أعضاء هيئة التدريس، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. حقيقة يسعدني ويشرفني أن أرحب بكم هذا الصباح مع بدء فعاليات هذا النشاط، وآمل بإذن الله أن يكون لقاء مثمر ولقاء ناجحا، كما أنه من دواعي الفخر والاعتزاز أن تحتضن جامعة الدمام ممثلة في كلية الطب وقسم جراحة المخ والأعصاب هذه النخبة المتميزة من المتحدثين من الداخل ومن الخارج. يسعدنا أيضا الحقيقة الالتقاء بالأخوة الزملاء في الجمعية السعودية لجراحة المخ والأعصاب للمرة السادسة في رحاب الجامعة، وفي هذا الإطار أريد أن أتقدم بالشكر والامتنان لسعادة رئيس الجمعية وإلى الأخوة الزملاء أعضاء الجمعية لدعمهم المستمر لبرنامج زمالة الجامعة في جراحة المخ والأعصاب. يعني الحقيقة الاجتماع هذه المرة يعني متميز لأسباب عدة. الحقيقة تميز الحقيقة في تنظيمه، ما سمعته من الأخ الدكتور عبد الرحمن العنزي الحقيقة من هذا التكامل الحقيقة الغير مسبوق في التنظيم. المكان هذا يحتضن المحاضرات العلمية الخاصة بهذا المؤتمر، لكن هناك أيضا فعالية في نفس الوقت في موقع آخر متعلقة بالتمريض جراحة المخ والأعصاب، وهناك أيضا فعالية أخرى متعلقة بالعلاج الطبيعي المتعلق أيضا بجراحة المخ والأعصاب. في المساء البارح الزملاء أيضا كان هناك نشاط عن العناية المركزة المتعلقة في جراحة المخ والأعصاب. حقيقة شيء يثلج الصدر، ويعني يعطي انطباع عن الحس الرائع اللي تتميز فيه الأخوة القائمين على القسم والقائمين أيضا على اللجنة المنظمة. الحقيقة أنهم كل أطياف أو كل الحقيقة الممارسين الصحيين من تمريض ومن علاج طبيعي ومن عناية مركزة وجراحين حقيقة يستفيدون من هذا اللقاء إلى أقصى حد، فلهم الشكر ولهم الثناء والامتنان الحقيقة لهذا الفكر النير والحقيقة الاستعداد والتنظيم. الشيء الآخر الحقيقة اللي يميز هذا اللقاء هو تزامنه مع مرور 25 عام على زمالة الجامعة في جراحة المخ والأعصاب. يعني كان نتاج لهذه السنوات مجموعة كبيرة الحقيقة من جراحي المخ والأعصاب هم الآن في مواقع قيادية في مستشفياتهم. أنا أسمعت أيضا من الدكتور عبد الرحمن أنه إن لم يكن كلهم الآن هم رؤساء الأقسام في جراحة المخ والأعصاب في المنطقة وأيضا خارج المنطقة، وهذا الحقيقة يبعث في النفس الغبطة والسرور الحقيقة، ويعطي الإخوة والزملاء في الكلية وفي القسم ونحن في الجامعة يعطينا دافع الحقيقة لمواصلة المشوار يعني بقوة وبدون تردد. I would like to express my sincere thanks and appreciation for our guests, both the international speakers and the national speakers, for answering the invitations of the organizing committee and coming all the way to share with us their knowledge and their experience. I wish them a pleasant stay here in Khobar and also a safe return back home. I'm sure that their contribution will add a lot to the scientific sessions in the meeting, and definitely it will be, because it's going to be inshallah very relevant, it will influence the practice of the neurosurgeons in the area and in the hospital. So thank you very much for your presence and for your contribution. Thank you also very much for the head of the Saudi Society for the Neurosurgery, for coming and sharing also with us this very important event, and he's been with us before and after this event actually. Wish you a very pleasant stay, and I wish you a very fruitful meeting, and looking forward to see you inshallah in the futures in similar sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Besh. Without further delay, we will start our first session titled Neurosurgery Education Meeting. Please welcome to the stage the chairpersons of this segment, Dr. Ahmed Ammar and Dr. Khalaf Al-Mtayri.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We'll start our first session in the morning. It's going to be hopefully a very nice discussion about the training modality of neurosurgery in Saudi Arabia in general. We are also lucky once we are discussing this issue because we have in the audience so many colleagues trained practically all over the region, starting from North Canada until Saudi Arabia. We will start with the first speaker, Dr. Jamjoom, Saudi Board Training in Neurosurgery. Please, Dr. Jamjoom.
I'm going to give you an overview of the Saudi Board of Neurosurgery. The neurosurgical training in Saudi Arabia was started in 1987 by the introduction of the, at that time was called King Faisal University Fellowship. It was a joint venture of 3 centers, primarily the King Faisal University in Dammam with the King Faisal Hospital in Riyadh and the Armed Forces Hospital in Riyadh too. The Saudi Board of Neurosurgery was launched in 1998, and it became immediately the national reference program, and it is run by the Saudi Commission for Health Specialties. For those who don't know the system in Saudi Arabia, this is the highest authority which supervises the training as well as the accreditation of the hospitals and the licensing of the doctors in Saudi Arabia. It is a structured program which extends over 6 years. The most important or the core part of the program is that it is a joint program. This means many centers contribute to the training of the residents, and it is conducted in centers accredited by the Saudi Commission for Health Specialties. And nowadays, every trainee in Saudi Arabia in neurosurgery must be registered in this program, and he has to fulfill the training according to the requirement of this program. Otherwise, his training will not be recognized. The objective of the program is to train and graduate neurosurgeons who are knowledgeable, competent, and capable of practicing neurosurgery safely. Now, this is the board which is supervising the program, At present, we don't have a separate board of neurosurgery. We are part of the board of surgery. There is the highest authority of the neurosurgery is the Training Coordination Committee. It supervises 3 subcommittees. One is called the Central Committee, which is concerned about the day-to-day issues of the training. And from the Central Committee, there are local committees in the different regions of Saudi Arabia. At present, there are 2 committees, one supervising the trainees in the Central and Eastern Province, and one supervising the trainees in the Western Province. And the local committees, they supervise the programs, the local programs in the hospitals. There is also an examination committee and a hospital accreditation committee. Now, the accreditation of the centers, there are certain requirements, making sure that the size of the center and the volume of work is good enough to ensure good training for the residents. At least there should be 2 consultants, at least there should be 10 beds allocated for neurosurgery, and there should be at least 120 neurosurgical procedures, of which 50% must be elective, and of course the center must be equipped with modern neurosurgical techniques. Now, the admission to the program is highly competitive. Of course, the resident must fulfill certain criteria, the most important of which is completing a basic medical program and the internship, and passing also the Saudi licensing exam and the success in the admission examination of the program and the interview. Now, there are other more administrative issues like getting sponsorship and then signing the commitment to abide with the rules of the program, and the trainee must be registered in the Saudi Council for Health Specialties, and of course there should be no physical or mental restriction that interferes with the practice of neurosurgery. Now, this is our admission exam. It is a 100 question MCQ exam over 2 hours, covering mostly neurosciences. It is held once every year. And the interview, the main objective is to test the motivation of the resident, and most important also his understanding of the nature of neurosurgery. Of course, we look into his fitness for the specialty and his references. Now, after the exam, the applicants are ordered in a descending order based on the total individual score. And we calculate our individual score by giving 50%. This is a regulation of the Saudi Council. 50% goes to the Saudi license examination, and then 20% for the GPA in the medical school, 20% for the written admission exam, and 10% for the interview. And then we order the residents based on their best performance. And the program structure of the program, as I said, it's 6 years training in accredited hospital, and we distinguish 2 phases. One is the junior residency for half of the program, and the other half is the senior residency. These are the rotations. I think they don't differ much from the main programs in the world. And the main objective of the junior residency is, of course, acquiring sound knowledge in basic clinical neurosciences and also in general surgical principles, as well as the fundamentals of a neurosurgical condition. And of course, mastering the neurosurgical examination and assessment, pre- and post-operative care, and also mastering the basic neurosurgical procedures like burr holes, ICP monitor, and standard craniotomies, and of course starting to be exposed to more complicated procedures. Now, the senior residency, it's pure neurosurgery, 36 months, and the trainee must make rotations in at least 2 centers. And here the residents will be faced with more advanced and challenging tasks and responsibilities to work partially independently in the management of emergencies and elective cases. And they will be more involved in the practice of major neurosurgical procedures. Now, the trainee are subject to continuous assessment at the end of each rotation, as well as at the end of the year. They have two exams. One is a written exam, an MCQ, over 2 hours, as well as an oral or clinical exam. Nowadays, we do it as an OSCE. And the overall annual evaluation consists of 60% is the result of the annual examination and 40% of the average assessment during 3 rotations. And the promotion depends from passing the annual assessment from year to year, except in year 3, the candidate must also pass the first part examination. The candidate who reaches level 3 and did not pass this exam, unfortunately, must repeat that year until he passes the exam. The examinations of the Saudi board, we have 2 major exams. One, the Saudi part, the first part, and the other one is the final, which is the certifying examination. And I don't want to bother you with these details here, but the candidate has 3 attempts to pass the first examination. Unfortunately, a candidate who doesn't pass 3 times, he has to be dismissed from the program. Now, the final examination, of course, before sitting for the final exam, the candidate must succeed in the overall evaluation of R3, and he must submit a certificate of the completion of the training as well as his operative log. And the exam consists of 2 parts. One is the MCQ over 2.5 hours, and then short note questions over 3 hours. Those who pass the written exam are allowed to sit for the clinical and the oral examination. And a candidate has a total of 5 attempts to gain a pass in the written examination, and a total of 3 attempts to gain pass in the clinical examination over a period of 5 years. Now, this is what we have achieved so far in the program. At present, we have 52 trainees, most of them in the central region, more than half of them, and there are 41 males and 11 females, so we have a relatively high percentage of females in our program, and we are proud also to be also an attractive program for trainees from the other neighboring countries. And this is the distribution of the candidates over the years and the regions. I still feel we did not reach the steady state, which means to get so many candidates as needed by the growth of the population and the, of course, retirement of some of the senior neurosurgeons. So I think we need some time to reach to that steady state. At the moment, there is definitely a great need for Saudi neurosurgeons. Now, we have 12 accredited centers, 5 in the central region, 6 in the western region, and only at the moment the very active one is the neurosurgical department in Dammam University. So far, the program graduated 15 candidates. 14 of them were males and 1 female, and 1 was from Bahrain. Now we come to, I was requested to list the advantages of the program. I think the most important advantage, this is the main advantage, is reduction of the country's dependence on training abroad. And I think we know that the training positions for neurosurgery are becoming more difficult to get abroad. There is high competition on these positions, and they are very limited. And I think we cannot depend on this type of training to cover the needs of the country. Now, this is just to show an old map from the WHO. Saudi Arabia is still one of the countries where the number of neurosurgeons per 100,000 population is less than 1, which means there is a deficiency. And the deficiency becomes more clear if we look into the number of the Saudi trained in neurosurgery. So there is at the moment about only 0.2 to 100,000 population in Saudi Arabia. And this is, most of them are in the Riyadh region. Now, of course, there is still a high need, and I think this program definitely provides good help or service to cover these needs. Now, further advantages, it sets the standards of the neurosurgical training in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and it opens opportunities also for trainees who could not obtain training post abroad or could not go abroad because of social reasons. And one of the important issues, the program helps indirectly in improving the neurosurgical services in the hospital because they try to get accreditation to the program, and also when residents are there, they talk and they know which center is better, and I think that helps to create a sort of competition among the centers to be the better ones. So in conclusion, the Saudi Board of Neurosurgery is an excellent program that is doing this country a great service, regardless what my brother is going to tell you about its disadvantages and weaknesses in the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zain. Actually, we have to tell you the idea of this session, which we consider very important session. We have currently 3 different systems for postgraduate training in neurosurgery. One is Saudi Board. Second, the MAM University Fellowship Program. Third is training abroad. So we try to a sort of auditing or evaluate each program, which is the strong point which we should build on, and what are the weak points, what we can correct and go ahead. So each program will be discussed. So the first one, Dr. Zain, he talked about the advantage of Saudi Board. Now Professor Abdul Hakim Jamjoom, who was involved from the first, he knows the ins and outs of the program, telling us about the disadvantages of Saudi Board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. When I mentioned to my residents that I have to critique the Saudi Board in 5 minutes, they thought I need 1 hour to mention. They could be talking. Anyhow, I will start by again repeating that how many neurosurgeons do we need? If we take even an average number of 101 neurosurgeon per 150,000 population, for the population of Saudi Arabia, we will be needing about 170 neurosurgeons. And as mentioned earlier, we have about 50 Saudi consultants now, and about 45 trainees. So we do need more neurosurgeons. And how do we increase this number? By motivating the best, by making a neurosurgical career in Saudi Arabia attractive, and by training more abroad or locally. To train more locally, we need more training centers. In Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, the various training centers, they belong to different health sectors with different funding strength and different size and even different prestige. I think it's fair to say that in the majority, there is no clear-cut catchment area, and certainly there is no regionalization. Nevertheless, over the last few years, more and more centers have been approved for training. Unfortunately, my statistics say 14. My brother mentioned it was 12. Let's say between 12 to 14 centers are approved at the present time for training. This will bring us to the first, what I think is a weakness, which is the inter-center variation in workload, in range of work, facilities, supervision, and academic activity. And this by itself, it reflects itself on the limitation in operative experience. I think we all know how important operative experience for a neurosurgical trainee, and there are many factors that will affect the operative load of a trainee. However, having a small unit with too many trainees, a small operative load, are probably the most important factors. When it comes to training, we already mentioned our residents have a lot of exams. The weaknesses here is that we do not have competencies that need to be achieved at various levels are not well delineated. This means a number of residents at various levels do similar work. In addition, our MCQ pool is limited. We don't have program reviews, and we don't have residents' feedback about the training. In the selection process, as mentioned earlier, the neurosurgical part only carries 25% from the whole overall assessment, with the interactive part used to be 5%. I don't know if recently has been changed to 10%. But again, that is very low for potential neurosurgical trainees. In addition, the vacancies are not announced early, and hence at the time of the selection process, we really don't know how many we're going to accept because we don't know how many vacancies are going to be available on that particular year. Of course, Saudi board, like most training programs in the world, research is not compulsory. But in the West, because of the competitive nature of the training, most residents end up having to do a lot of research to actually survive and complete the training. However, here, maybe life is more leisurely, so only a limited number of our residents are involved in research and they have published papers. Most of them are quite weak on research methodologies, and I'm not aware of anybody who has undertaken a research degree. I think when we compare the Saudi board with the more established Western qualifications, one has to also address the issue of program history and maturity, and even use the word brand name. I mean, if you have the FRCSC, you can walk around and pretend you know everything, and people will believe you, and even probably they'll pay you a better salary. We cannot probably do that with a local qualification. I'll just go through a list of some of the suggestions. I think that we are admitting too many trainees. In the UK, they take 15 to 20 trainees a year, and that is a country 3 times the size of Saudi Arabia. We should be looking at 5 to 10 trainees per year. And I think we should have more strict criteria in approving new training centers, particularly with their operative load. I think the 6-year training should be pre-planned, so each resident will know exactly which rotations they will be doing during the 6 years. I don't think there is any shame of labeling centers into an A and a B list according to the operative load and according to the number of consultants. And then a trainee will have his fair share or her fair share of the A's and the B's centers. Each candidate should have a logbook that should be scrutinized at the end of each year. There should be a syllabus and some competency checklist. Maybe we should consider introducing a CAN-MED style reviews and residents' feedback. I think our residents should be encouraged to take external examination as a matter of quality assurance for our training, such as the European Certificate of Neurosurgery or the Arab Board. I'm sure some are already doing that. We should perhaps encourage more international examiners to attend our final examination and not make the residents pay for it. They're already paying a lot of money for the training every year. And then also we should consider having an exchange program with certain international, with selected international centers. Certainly more weight should be put for the neurosurgical assessment than 25%, and more weight for the interview than 5% or 10%. And in fact, we should consider a UK-style national selection, OSCE. The training vacancy should be available well in advance before the selection process. Most residents should undergo research, at least one project a year, some kind of audit or a scientific presentation. And those who are more academically capable, we should encourage them to do a research degree. We should be organizing some kind of review courses at least twice a year for residents. And we should be expecting a CME hours that are neurosurgically related from them every year. Again, after they qualify, you know, maybe not directly related to the Saudi board, but following the board, I mean, we have people who are going to be working in the smaller cities and the towns. Do we really need everybody to become to think of subspecialty before mastering the bread and butter of neurosurgery? I think that a lot of them maybe being a good general neurosurgeon is a good idea. Again, we have fellowships. We already have a pediatric fellowship here in Saudi Arabia. Most of them have to of course, go abroad. And then the practicality, as mentioned earlier, the 50 Saudi consultants are all clustered in the major cities. How are we going to convince people to go and work in Najran and Al Jawf and these places? And I think it's not a matter of just improving neurosurgery there. It's also improving the lifestyle there to attract people to live and work there. And I think the final statement I'm going to mention, which goes back to the discussion that's been carried out over the last maybe 30 years, I think the best support or the best improvement in Saudi board in neurosurgery will have to be convincing decision makers how to amalgamate the small units and how to regionalize neurosurgery. Because certainly when it comes to training in neurosurgical center, bigger is better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hakim. Thank you very much. Next speaker, our colleague, Professor Abdul Rahman, and he's going to talk about the KFU Training Fellowship Program. Please, Professor Abdurrahman.
Again, good morning, everybody. Actually, I will talk, we have only 5 minutes, and actually I'm assigned to talk about only the advantages of the, the MAM University Fellowship Program. And in fact, it's not really far from the Saudi Board Training Program because we are here in the same country. But just to highlight some of the important points of advantages of our training program, but at the beginning, I need just again to re-emphasize that it is the first Saudi training program in neurosurgery in the whole kingdom and also in the whole Gulf region. Now, once we go to the advantages, as I said, it's not really that far from the Saudi board, but I need to with some differences definitely. The first advantage that is enable the trainee to join the training program soon after they finish their MBBS. As everybody knows, training program in neurosurgery is the longest training program in the whole medical field. And currently, the candidate, they need to wait, 2 to 4 years in order to get an acceptance in a decent training program, especially abroad. And I do believe, as my mentor, Bernstein, believe that life is too short, to waste, 4 or 5 years from your life just waiting for an acceptance. So our program, at least it helped to join your training program soon after you finish your medical college. That will lead to finish relatively early your training and your practice and enjoy your life as a neurosurgeon. The second, advantage is that it was a joint program between the 3 prestigious neurosurgical centers. Namely, the King Faisal Specialist, Hospital in Riyadh, Military Hospital in Riyadh, and our hospital, King Fahd Hospital University. That kind of joint training program, again, is almost similar to the Saudi board in a way that to overcome the weakness and shortage which might exist in a single training program. Now, this is actually probably the major, advantages of our training program, that it has an academic component. During my time, the candidate, they need to do a full thesis. Currently, the candidate, he is not allowed to sit for the final exam unless he published 2 original papers. In the past, we think this is really important for those who love to work in academic institute. But currently, I believe it's a must for anybody who wants to be a decent, updated neurosurgeons. Now, it's avoid the negative social impact of being away from your loved one. We know very well that training away from your family, from your relatives, from your community, it has, with no doubt, some mental, physical, social impact on the trainee and his family, and that disadvantage is not to exist in our training program. Now, serving our very own community, we know very well that our own patients, our own people, they love to be served by their own people. And we know very well that the trainee and the resident, they are in contact with the patient more than anybody else in the department, more than the consultant themselves. So actually our own community, they do deserve this service. And more important than that, by the time you finish your training, you become expert in dealing and communicating with your patients. Now, it's only 5 minutes. Just, at the end of my training, it's my fault when I sit for the final exam, I started thinking of going abroad to do subspecialty, and I was interested in neuro-oncology and skull base for several reasons. One of them because I'm interested in that field, but also because it covers most of the neurosurgical diseases, procedures. But I have to admit, because it was a new training program at that time, there was a debate in my mind that probably we are not as, as great as, a training in international, centers. And because of that, actually, I decided to go abroad. And, I went to Canada, Toronto, to do those, fellowship. And there, I met my mentor and my friend, Professor Mark Bernstein. Just 2 days of my arrival, I was in the OR. There was a case of a false meningioma, just touching the severe sagittal sinus. And he told me, Abdul, do you want to do this case? I told him yes. And then I found myself doing the case alone with a junior resident under his supervision. Next day, I met him in the clinic, and that's his statement. Abdul, I know nothing about your training, but I am very impressed about your skills, and from now on, you can do most of my cases. That statement was very rewarding, very reassuring that we are doing equally good. Now, in general, what's our accomplishment? It's 13 graduate. contributing excellent services to academy, patient care, and community. And thank you.
Do the MAM University Fellowship Program has weak points? Yes. So now one of our graduates, Dr. Hussam Al-Habib, who knows everything about it, he's going to tell us about our weak points.
Assalamu alaikum. So, Dr. Ammar, Professor Ammar, this difficult task you gave me to criticize my own training. So, for improvement, we should talk frankly. That let's start by the names of KFU and UOD fellowships. As a graduate, I have strong feeling on the name of KFU fellowship, and I share this with most of my colleagues. And is it necessary to change the name to University of Dammam Fellowship Program? I don't know. So the main features for this program is an academic and professional program. But unfortunately, the academic part didn't receive enough attention in the program. And there is no special prepared courses and no criteria for selection. The other one is the consultants are few. There is no various subspecialties. Patients are few. And I think this is why it was joint program to expose trainee to more patient, more experience. And the other thing that the service coverage is priority. And that affected the rotation, affected the work, and affected the trainee also. So research, I have a hard time with the research. I have done animal research. There was no research lab. I used the old anesthesia machine. We transferred it to the creation center and we did our procedure there. After that, we borrowed a farm from a friend and we transferred the animal there. We asked for veterans to help friends and workers to take care of these animals. So it was a hard time. At the same time, I was covering the clinical work at the same time. So there is no time for research, like in other institute, which will be off for 1 year to do research. And after that, big research, you don't have a degree. For example, a master degree or a PhD degree. The other thing, the research methodology course. I took that course. It was 2 weeks course, and it was excellent, and it taught me how to think in a research way. And this, I think, was stopped on the new curriculum, and I strongly advise to be back. There is several good research which have not been published. So another thing, we are lack of courses to learn trainee how to teach, how to publish articles, and there is no courses to show to teach the trainee how to conduct examination. Even in the contribution of the trainee in teaching, it's very limited for the student, and there is no sponsorship for workshop and courses. When I was doing my fellowships, within 2 years, I was sponsored by the university in Canada for 3 workshops in USA, fully sponsored, and 2 as a speaker in international. So it's 5 courses in 2 years. Finally, I'm very proud to be a graduate of the first neurosurgery program in Saudi Arabia and the region, and I wish to see it among the best program in the world. Thank you.
Shukran, thank you very much. Our next speaker, Dr. Maher Hassouna, is going to talk about training abroad. Professor Maher, please.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome you all in Al Khubar. And thank you to the President and the organizing committees of this 6th Sense meeting. My assignment is to highlight that training abroad thing, and just not to be biased, because I was involved in the training of residents in Saudi Arabia. Statistics from the Ministry of Health reveal that there are 356 neurosurgeons, and this is not, I think this number includes consultants, specialists, and residents. And the real number is 200 less than this, I think, for as a consultant, 156. And 1/3 of them are Saudis. These consultants have been involved in improving practice of neurosurgery in Saudi Arabia, and involved in establishing the training programs, and involved in training the residents. And most of them, if not all, they have some sort of training abroad. Canada has been and still a popular destination for training abroad. Germany, United Kingdom, United States, France, and certainly other countries. To get into one of these programs or some of these programs, examination has to be passed, like licensing exam in the United States, qualifying exams in Canada, and PLAB in England, and the licensing exam of Saudi Arabia here, in addition to the admission exam. I think we jumped some of these. Okay. So the programs are structures abroad in these centers. This is in the United States, from the West Coast, from Portland. They have 7 years. Most of the programs are 7 plus minus 1 year, or 6 plus minus 1 year. They have a research year in them, and they are in the United States. They are accredited by the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, and they have to pass primary examination with multiple choice questions during their training, in the 3rd year or maybe after, and the oral examination after finishing their training. Other program from quite east, also it has 7 years, and they have 2 research years instead of one in the other program. And what interests me is that they go into specialty training early on. And I think this is a good program, just to go and be exposed to these specialty, and then if you want to do some more later on. And they have the same as the other. In Canada, the programs are accredited by the Royal College of Physician and Surgeon Canada. This is in Calgary, close to the west. And it has a 6-year program. You have to have principle of surgery after finishing the 2 years. In my days, about 20 years ago, we were just having this. We can have it anywhere just before we sit for the final exam. And they have 1 year of research. It's more or less similar programs. And they have to sit for the final exam. This is in Ottawa from the east part. They have also a nice program with 6 years, but they have 2 research years. They have 1 research year, and this is a flexible program in a way that is tailored according to the need of the resident, whether he wants to have being academic neurosurgeon or being a community neurosurgeon. So they either go to research or they go to subspecialty training. And in England, this is example for Royal College of Surgeons in England. They have also 6 years plus 1 or 2 years additional, which they can have either research or subspecialty. So all the programs are similar. They have to have the MRCS before they enter the 3rd year, and finish, they have kind of FRCS of neurosurgery after the 6 years, after they finish 6 years. In neurosurgery, as shown before, we have 6 years of training with junior level 3 years and senior level 3 years. We have, in a way, more exposure to clinical neurosurgery in our program. It's 4.5 years of pure clinical neurosurgery in our program. The advantages, as I listed them, when these programs, they have licensing exam and interviews, so the resident will boost or foster his clinical knowledge and basic medical science. These are well established with long history of excellence. They are better structured. Residents in that area, they will have first-hand encounter for new technology or new studies, multi-center studies. And they have competitive atmosphere, comprehensive patient care, and as said before, they have opportunity for research and fellowship. On a personal level, the resident or trainee will learn new culture, meet new people, build bridges, and improve or acquire a new language. He will focus more on his training, being away from social commitment, and he can teach his culture to others. And when he comes back, he has certificate, which is a brand name, as Dr. Jamjoom said, which is recognized in most of the countries, and will have a background from different training programs in our country. So what they accomplished, they graduated large number of trainees, we cannot say how much, and they gained worldwide reputation. Thank you. And they set the standard for sound training. And training is recognized in many countries, as I said. And they are in continuous improvement in their structure and in their concept. From the days of Halstead, which he started the structuring of the program in Johns Hopkins, passing by Churchill in 1931. They have about 100 years before us when they started their program. You see this, it was in 1889, and we started here in 1987. And ending now in general competencies. So they have always improvement, they improve. So these are the competencies, 6 core competencies in the United States. The patient care, medical knowledge, practice-based learning that we learn from our practice and teach ourselves, teach residents, teach patients, interpersonal communication, professionalism, and system-based practice. We know our system, work within it, improve it, criticize it. And in Canada, they have the CanMed, which is 7 core competencies. So the resident is expected to be a scholar, professional, communicator, collaborator, manager, health advocate, and medical expert. This is the essential thing. It started a little earlier than the United States in 1996 and modified slightly in 2005. And they have better standards, better physicians, and better care. This is their objective. And it's been integrated into accreditation standards, objectives of training, and final and training evaluation, a blueprint for the exam, and maintenance of certification. So training abroad, I think neurosurgery, we still need our residents to go outside. Maybe in the future will be less, but I don't think this will end at all, because I think we should have always some residents going outside and trained. In this way, we have the communication, we have diversity of training, we have, it will be better for the kingdom here if we have people outside, maybe not too much as now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Dr. Amr Hakim, Assistant Professor of Neurosurgery at King Saud University, who spent all his training abroad, is going to tell us about the difficulties of training abroad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for choosing me to present on challenges. And actually, it's a personal challenge because I present in front of my mentor, Dr. Bernstein, whom I spent 6 years training with. And the other challenge is actually standing here and complaining about a program, and I hate to stand and complain. However, I've changed the title a little bit from disadvantages and weaknesses, which are terms that imply more rigorous assessment, which I don't really have any rigorous assessment to rely on in this talk. And I put it in a way that there are challenges of training abroad, and I would really like to list some of these challenges. And cultures are different, countries are different. I think even in simple hand signs, for example, if you go to the US or Canada and you do like this is a science of excellence. In Saudi is like wallahi la warrik, is like I will show you a hard time, and so forth. So there are things that you watch when you go outside, even your body gestures and your movements. And there are things that when I started thinking about the presentation, I didn't really know where is the default training for Saudi neurosurgeons. Is it inside or outside? You kind of want to start with the default and then kind of start to tell people what is the alternative. But if you don't define your default, it becomes a little bit more challenging. So that's a thought I will leave you with. So we divided the training abroad into 3 major areas. The training personal challenges into training challenges, personal and social challenges, and financial challenges. So we did a little study where we did a survey that was distributed by email by SurveyMonkey. And it was done in the last 10 days of March. I just had this idea recently. And the inclusion criteria for it were only Saudi neurosurgeons, because we thought that if we're gonna tell the new graduates what are the challenges outside, they need to know what is the experience of people who are grown in their culture, have the same nationality, and will experience the same circumstances. And also those who only did their residency outside, because here we are talking about residency, we're not talking about fellowship. And because it's a SurveyMonkey, we all know it's anonymous. We sent the survey of 20 questions, 3 main domains, training, personal and social, and financial. And pardon me, the survey should have been better done, should have been tested for validity, for reliability, and should have got a focus group and revised the questions and then send it again to be rigorous. However, it's done in a short time, and I hope we can get some information out of it that are useful. So the results, I sent the survey initially to 28 neurosurgeons emails. I got the list from one of the major suppliers, companies. 3 emails came back as wrong emails. I found another email for one of them. Anyways, the end result is 26 neurosurgeons received the invitation, which is a direct link to the website. And the response I got is 16 out of 26, and for survey, 61.5% is really a great response. 14 completed all the surveys, some of them skipped some questions. Okay, I would like to go over the survey questions, and I'm just gonna read the questions out because maybe it's hard to see from behind. The first question, where did you have your neurosurgery residency training? And you can see the green bar is Canada, where 75% of those who received the survey or answered them, those who answered the survey, 1 person trained in France, 1 person trained in United Kingdom, and 2 people trained in Germany replied to the survey. And people, where have they done their basic MD degree? I think 73% have done it in Saudi Arabia. 1 person who is trained in Canada did it in another Arabic country, European countries, 2 people, and one person in North America. And this is kind of your study population that you're addressing. So the third question was, how long did it take you to get accepted in an international neurosurgery training program? And this really touches on the practicality issues of getting accepted outside, and 68% or close to 70% got accepted within the first year of their application. 30% got accepted within 2 years, which is actually reasonable. And almost all of them got accepted by applying into one country. They did not have to apply to many countries. I must admit that there's a large age variation and difference between generations, and people responded to this survey, so this information may not necessarily apply to this time and date. Why was language an obstacle at the beginning of your neurosurgery training? It's not an obstacle in most of the trainees. In 11 out of the 16, little challenge, but did not require courses. Those were people trained in Canada, 3 people. It was sort of a challenge that they had to take courses for more than 6 months in people who went to Germany and France, and this is quite understandable. We don't teach German and French in our country in basic schools, most of the schools. During the final year of training, was there difficulty communicating with patients and medical personnel? I think the figure has improved a bit. Most of them did not have any difficulty. Some had difficulty, but did not affect their progress in training. And 1 person trained in Canada has so much difficulty that was unbearable. How did the culture in the country affect your training? Was no effect in about 7 people. The rest had some difficulty, but did not really affect the progress in training. The 8th question, did you feel that you are getting the same quality of neurosurgery training like others from the same country? And I think 81% said yes, they got exactly the same. There are 12% said we were not the same, but the difference was very small. And these are 2 people trained in Canada. 1 person trained in France said we were not the same, but the difference was big. Following residency, did you get support for acceptance in fellowship training like others from the same country? And we tried to touch on these similarities in order to see whether they get the same training or not and the same support. 70% said, yes, we got exactly the same support. 25% said, I was not interested in fellowship, or fellowship was not an option for me. And one person said, we were not the same, but he got help. And nobody said we were not the same and I got no help. So everybody almost got help in support to their fellowship. Was the final board exam for you similar to others from the same country? Yes, exactly the same in all of them except 1 person who trained in France. He said, no, I took a different exam, which really leads to the second question. Is your country of training accredited by the Saudi Commission for Health Specialties? Understandably, a person trained in France had to take exam to be licensed in Saudi Arabia, while the others didn't. How easy was it to perform your prayers? And now we're getting into more religious and way of life things. So performing prayers during your neurosurgery residency, I think almost all didn't have any difficulty. Some people had some difficulty, but they managed. How did your wife tolerate your residency training outside? No difficulty at all in 25%. Little difficulty, she managed. I must say that my wife put this question. a major challenge almost got separated. Two people, one person got divorced. And one not applicable, maybe that person was not married at training. How did your parents tolerate your residency outside, leaving them at home and going abroad? No problem at all in 12.5%. Little difficulty, but they managed in 60%. Major challenge, they could not cope, got sick, did not like it in 18.8%, or not applicable in 6%. When you look at living abroad, did it affect children's upbringing? It was positive in 9 people. It was mixed in 1 person, neutral in 3, and not applicable. Maybe they didn't have kids at the time. During your training outside Saudi, how would you describe your financial status? The majority had no struggle for basic expenses. Basic expenses were defined as paying rent, paying for school, paying for your car, paying for the insurance. 2 people had to struggle, but they could manage, and 1 person needed financial help for basics. This is outside. But when they came back to Saudi and they started their practice, 40% they needed major financial help even to pay basic expenses like rent and basic life stuff. Another 40% were totally independent, and some were in the middle. When you started practicing in Saudi Arabia as a consultant, did you have to restructure your way of clinical assessment to Arabic-speaking people, even though they were Arabic by their mother tongue is Arabic? When they went outside, some of them, they had to adjust back. However, nobody had major difficulty. So the blue bar is really little adjustment, but it went well. And then when you started practicing in Saudi Arabia as a consultant, did you have difficulty understanding how people decide about having surgery? How do they assess the risk, and how are you getting into the deeper thoughts of people consideration to neurosurgical procedure? The majority said little difficulty, then it was okay. 1 person said still difficult in the most part. And then based on your overall experience, where would you recommend the new Saudi graduates do neurosurgery training? 71% recommended to have recommended training to be outside. 21% were indifferent, and 7% said inside Saudi Arabia. And we have to remember one of the big weaknesses of this little study is that it studied only people who trained outside. We do not have a control group from people trained in the country. So at the end, we had a little section for further comments from the participants, and I give you the exact quotes from some of these comments. So 1 person said, working 120 hours per week is no fun. If you do not have the physical, psychological, and emotional ability for it, do not do it. Another person said, going abroad for neurosurgical and other kind of training or study should not be just a matter of having the training. It must be seen as an invaluable opportunity to get in touch with a different culture and higher civilization. Without this vision, it's not worth it to go abroad just for training. There is no challenge for open-minded people. For them, the challenge is not during training, but after you come back to face the hundreds of obstacles to practice what you learn. So different aspects, somebody focusing on the how busy the training outside. Obviously, you need somebody to say how busy the training inside is. Talking about the culture and civilization, we need also counter argument about culture and civilization here. And then talking about how you tackle things when you come back, and the obstacles. Are the obstacles similar to somebody trained here? This is maybe different. So I didn't really want to put a conclusion. I think this is a kind of work that you want to present to others, and then you can be the judge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we move, before we try to reach general consensus about it, to our expert, Professor Sheikh. He is going to talk to us about the strong points needed for training programs. And I had the honor a long time ago, that is, I was trained in very of my life by.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Abdurrahman Al-Anasi, the conference president, Professor Zain Jamjum, the SNS president, Dr. Abdullah Rubesh, the president of the University of Daman, and my very good friend, colleague, and I'm proud to say former trainee, Ahmed Amar, for having invited me to this very elegant city and country of yours, and I'm really very honored to be amongst you. So I'm going to make some comments about the strength of a training program. So these comments reflect the distillation of three elements. The first is somewhat the view of the American Board of Neurological Surgery, which has well-defined criteria. The second part reflects the views of our own training program at the University of Washington. Dr. Rich Ellenbogen is currently the chair and the program director, and I was previously the chair and program director at the University, George Washington University. But we have a number of people very actively involved in training and faculty, and we have perpetual discussions about this. And also I interact very closely with our residents, so some of their views are embodied. Finally, they also reflect my own personal views about training and something about future training. So these are the key elements which I consider to be important for high-quality training. So the first is the patient care quality. Second, number and variety of cases. The environment to perform high-quality neurosurgery. The number and quality of faculty. The number and quality of residents. Good resident educational program. Faculty research and publications. The involvement of residents in research and writing. And then finally, track record of the residents who have finished the program. And I'm going to talk about each one of these issues. So the first and foremost in a training program is the quality of patient care. And I believe that patients should be cared for in a compassionate environment. What this means to me is that there is no distinction between paying and non-paying patients. All patients are treated in a very high standard, and the physician respects the patient's wishes as well as their culture and family in providing treatment, and their personal, their views, wishes. The outcomes of treatment are consistent with international standards. Gone are the days when you can say, well, you know, we are here in wherever, and our results are not as good as they are in the United States. Perhaps this is still true in Africa because the neurosurgeons there are often working under very, very difficult circumstances. But most other countries, due to the rapidity and frequency of communication, no matter where you go in the world, and I've been to many corners, and I'm impressed that neurosurgeons are striving to achieve the same quality of care for their patients. The outcomes of treatment should be monitored in a consistent manner. This is very important, I believe, that you should have a continuous measurement of patient outcomes, and there should be continuous quality improvement. So I always tell my residents that whatever you're doing today, the next year you have to do better, and this should be the goal. Complications of treatment are discussed in weekly or monthly conferences, publicly and honestly, but with the view to improvement. So measures for improvement should be implemented. The costs of care, preventive care, as well as alternative treatments, including no treatment, should be discussed. And the whole training program should promote an atmosphere of curiosity and academic inquiry into making the right decisions for our patients. Now, number and type of cases. This is actually being formalized currently in the American Board of Neurological Surgery. This did not used to be the case, but now they've actually tracking the number of cases that every finishing resident has scrubbed on. And they have set certain minimum numbers, but they also are defining the percentile. So we know what the University of Washington, where it stands in terms of transsphenoidal surgery, aneurysm microsurgery, aneurysm endovascular surgery, etc. So, and all branches of neurosurgery should be covered, and I include here the branches that you know: head and spine trauma, cerebrovascular microsurgery and endovascular surgery, brain and spinal tumor surgery, skull-based surgery, degenerative and other spinal surgery, including spinal instrumentation, functional surgery, including deep brain stimulation and epilepsy surgery, radiosurgery, endoscopic surgery, pediatric, and peripheral nerve surgery. There should be participation by the residents in all aspects of patient care, including the preoperative evaluation, surgical operations, postoperative, intensive care, and follow-up care. And the amount of scut work, what the residents frequently refer to as scut work, should be minimized by the enlistment of helpers such as nurse practitioners, physician assistants, etc. Let's get rid of this here. Okay. So the next one is the development of an environment to perform high-quality neurosurgery. And how does that? And I think all neurosurgeons recognize it when they see it. But it requires the support of the hospital, the university, and the government for neurosurgery in general. There should be good offices provided for faculty and residents. Both faculty and residents must have an adequate salary. Neurosurgery is one of the most difficult and demanding specialties. The tiny decisions we make and tiny errors of either judgment or technique can result in major complications for patients for their lifetime. Neurosurgical training is very long. We have always in every country what we call the creme de la creme, the cream of the crop. Therefore, neurosurgery should be adequately rewarded, and this should be a given, and this should be the general consensus of the society and government. And I'm surprised that some even very rich countries, this is not the case. Outpatient clinics, adequate number of operating rooms and modern equipment, you know all about that. High quality anesthesia, neurophysiological monitoring and nursing. Intensive care, intensivists, and I do believe in the dual management of patients where both intensivists and neurosurgeons are involved. Other services such as emergency department, neurology, neuroradiology, consultative services such as infectious diseases, cardiology, etc., neuropathology, rehabilitation, and nursing. Diagnostic services, you know all about this, but modern diagnosis also requires, for instance, a biplane angio suite for endovascular work. And it's very important to know whether 24/7, that is 24 hours, 7-day service is available, because neurosurgery, unfortunately, is 24/7. There's no time when we can say, well, we can't take care of you because so-and-so is on holiday. We are expected to be available, so the hospital must provide that environment. Now, the number and quality of faculty is very important. And what is the minimum number of faculty? And I think this has to be defined in your own country and environment. But certainly in our place, we believe that if possible, every specialty must be represented by at least 2 members. So in other words, in our place, cerebrovascular surgery, there are 2 people doing it. Skull-based, there are 3 people. Brain tumors, there are 2, and so on and so forth. The results of operations are good or excellent in a high percentage of cases. And here I'm talking only about elective surgery, because obviously when the patient presents you in very bad shape due to head injury or spinal injury or subarachnoid hemorrhage, you can't really say they should be better than 90%. My personal standard is to achieve better than 95% year after year for elective operations. Care must be provided with compassion and passion. Passion is desire to excel. Quality research should be performed, and I will talk about this. The faculty are very strongly interested in education and of the next generation and the spirit of academic inquiry. This is very important. A teacher is a teacher, but not in some places we have the old Germanic model. The professor says, well, this is it, and it's done. But the teacher should have command respect, but also should promote inquiry and doubt in the mind of the student. The teachers should serve as good role models for their residents and for medical students, and they are held in high esteem by the neurosurgical community, such as the leaders here in this organization. Now, obviously, the number and quality of residents themselves is very important in a program, and what are and how, and the residents obviously should be chosen by a competitive process, and I really saw how it's done here. And the characteristics of what I consider important in a good resident, what I'm looking for, are the following: the passion to succeed, compassion, but compassion refers to 4 elements: compassion to patients, compassion to colleagues, compassion to your family, and compassion to yourself. What does compassion to self mean? Recognizing your strengths and weaknesses, and when there is a weak area, try to overcome it. When you have a strength, you develop it, and this is what is compassion to self means. Reverence to teachers without diminishing inquiry. So in India, old India, there was a thing called Gurukula Vasam. So the student was actually taken to the house of the guru or the teacher and left there for 10 years. Student was expected to do everything for a guru, including washing their clothes and massaging them and variety of services, in which in turn the guru provided free education and took care of the student just like his own child. Of course, nowadays we don't demand so much from our residents. Of course, sometimes we ask them to bring you coffee, but more often than not, I'm buying them coffee. So, but nevertheless, the students must maintain reverence, but they should be constantly questioning in their own mind, is this the right treatment? Is this the right method? Etc. So, reverence doesn't mean that you accept everything that is being said to you. Continuous learning both academically and from patient care practice. Surgical skill, I put it way down the list. Surgical skill is very important, but neurosurgery allows for the development of people with various levels of physical skill. For instance, microsurgery is highly demanding, perhaps radiosurgery is not so demanding, but neurosurgery requires both. You have to be a good team player, honest and ethical, communicate well, and finally academic research and writing. There's enough time provided for learning without getting tired, able to handle neurosurgical patient-related stress, this was already mentioned, ability to recognize mistakes and be sensitive to critique and invest in a corrective process, and finally, wanting to be the best neurosurgeon in the world. Every resident must feel that they will like to be the best person in the world when they finish. Now, the educational program itself has to be detailed and didactic. The first thing, of course, is the preceptorship, which is pretty much what all programs in the world at the moment follow, the method set up by Halstead in various means or forms. There should be a didactic teaching program. Newer methods of learning are becoming more and more important because we simply don't have the time to go to the operating room and make mistakes. So we're going to be seeing more and more cadaver lab-based training, computer-based training, virtual reality training, etc., and then the resident will have to fulfill certain criteria before going on to actual patient care. Achieving preset milestones in each year and each rotation. This was already mentioned. Continuous monitoring and counseling by the trainers. There should be methods for correction of problems. And finally, problem residents are dealt with in a fair and rapid manner without compromising patient care. At the end of the day, we have to recognize that we have to take care of our patients and train, so we can't compromise our first goal at the expense of the second. Now, it's very important that the faculty are engaged in academic activity. Academic activity refers to two things: research and teaching. So research can be one of several. It can be laboratory, it can be clinical outcomes, clinical trials, or new product and system innovations. The faculty collaborate in this research amongst themselves with other doctors or basic scientists. They present regularly in national and international meetings. They publish in peer-reviewed journals of high quality and or books and book chapters. The residents must also be encouraged and required to have academic activity. So what does it involve? Residents are taught statistical methodology and also how to conduct and evaluate clinical studies. The residents are involved in research, formal research, for at least 1 year. And 1 year may not be enough, but that's about all the time sometimes we have. So those who want to do more should be given the opportunity to do so. Residents participate in the writing of academic papers. There actually, some programs have a requirement of a minimum number of papers. So this is maybe something you can think about. The residents present in weekly conferences. The residents must have constant practice. They should present cases or topics in weekly conferences, journal clubs, and also national conferences. And eventually, they should be given the opportunity to become academic leaders in their own right. Lastly, the track record of finished residents from a program is also very important. This, of course, is more important for established programs than newer ones. We feel that at least 50% of the finishing residents should go on to what we consider academic jobs. The finished residents are continuously involved in high-quality patient care, and some of them become academic leaders themselves. Also, they remain interested in their own training program by a variety of means. This could be interaction with faculty, coming to conferences regularly, maybe referring some difficult cases, and in certain cases, perhaps they may be rich enough that they can establish endowments for professorships, etc. And the residents are responsible for creating the brand for the training program. So the resident, when you say this resident graduated from the University of Pittsburgh or University of Washington, this should really create a special sense wherever you go in the world. This should be the goal for every training program. Now, there are a number of future questions which we debate a lot in our own program, and I debate sometimes in my own mind. What should be the length of basic neurosurgery training versus specialty training? I personally would like to see basic neurosurgery training just 4 years, and then specialized neurosurgery training. I mean, this is becoming more and more the norm in countries like US or Canada. So I feel that after that 4 years, if you want to be a cerebrovascular surgeon or skull-based surgeon, you need to invest another 4 years, something like this. But this is creates certain conflicts and problems for us in terms of workforce. What is the right number of neurosurgeons? This is, again, really debated, and there's no good answer for this. And I think each country has to develop its own algorithm. I think that somewhere around 1 per 100,000 is the right number, but there is maldistribution. Neurosurgeons are more distributed in the major cities than in smaller places. Recertification of neurosurgery. Now, this is a standard in the US. People graduating after, I think, about 5 years ago, they have to sit for a recertification program every 5 years. And that has various components. And I think this is becoming, recognized in other countries as well. The important question is how to develop judgment. Judgment sometimes comes early for some residents, but for most of us, it takes time. And one of my teachers used to say, good judgment comes from bad experience, but experience actually comes from bad judgment. So they have a balance. How do you retrain neurosurgeons in a career? Most neurosurgeons are going to work at least 30 years. In this 30-year period, neurosurgery is definitely going to evolve. So, for instance, about 7 years ago, I was personally retrained in endovascular surgery. I completed it 2 years ago, and I recognized that I need that in order to develop my own judgment and skills. And so there may be spinal fusion surgery, or there may be endoscopic surgery. A variety of things may be there. So neurosurgery is constantly evolving. Therefore, should our training programs be the focus of retraining neurosurgeons? And I think this could be an important question. How do you deal with what we call bad eggs in neurosurgery? We all know that, I don't know about your countries, but certainly in US, we have what we call bad eggs. We know that there are neurosurgeons who have consistently poor performance or poor judgment, etc. And sometimes we just don't deal with them adequately, and this is a great impediment to the society. And then the lawyers get involved and so on and so forth. But this is really a question. Maintaining physical and mental health. Actually, this should be something that should be started even when you are a resident. And I don't believe that the work hours should compromise this. I think that the neurosurgery is a very demanding specialty, so you need to do this throughout your life. The balance, your neurosurgeons have to achieve a balance between work, family, and personal health. So this is important. How do you teach that? And finally, I personally believe that spirituality, and I know that many of you here are very spiritual, and you have a seamless connection between spirituality and medicine. But every neurosurgeon has to come to grips with this himself at some point. About 10 years ago, I started saying a prayer with my patients right before surgery, and I found that it helped me a lot, and it helped the patients. I felt like it reduced complications, but it was not a randomized trial, and therefore I could not prove it to you one way or the other. It did. Finally, I want to conclude by this statement by Mahatma Gandhi. It says, "An eye for an eye will make the whole world blind." Thank you very much for your attention.
Now, it's an honor and a pleasure to introduce Professor Mark Bernstein, who is the teacher of so many of the trainee and consultant and chairman of departments in Saudi Arabia. He will talk about training in Canada.
Thank you very much. This talk is not just about neurosurgery in Canada. It will culminate in some ethical challenges, and it's quite a short talk, so we'll make up some time. But before I start, I want to thank the organizing committee, particularly Dr. Elanazi and Dr. Ammar, for the gracious invitation. I'm deeply, deeply honored to be here. I'd also like to thank Dr. Mariam Al-Rashid, one of the residents here, who's been very helpful with her time and showing me around, and I had the pleasure of meeting her 6 months ago. So I've had a long love affair with your country, and it started 15 years ago or so when I had fellows like Dr. Elanazi in Toronto, and I've had the pleasure and honor of being involved in training from the beginning to the end of about 10 or 11 Saudi residents, and it's been one of the very enriching things in my life, and I cherish it very much. So it's a special honor to be here. 1 or 2 minutes about neurosurgery in Canada. About 200 neurosurgeons for 33 million people. 95% are in universities. And every Canadian has health insurance through the government, so there are never discussions about money, which philosophically appeals to me a lot. There are 14 postgraduate, and some of this will touch on some of the stuff that's been spoken of this morning. There are 14 postgraduate training programs. There are about 20 new residency positions per year across the country. And there are additional slots available for international residents. The vast majority have been Saudi. So I think it's a little appropriate to talk about neurosurgical training in Canada because it's hard to get an exact number on the percentages, but a really substantial percentage of you neurosurgeons have done either entire residencies in Canada or substantial fellowship training. So there is a very strong bond between the neurosurgical communities of Canada and Saudi Arabia, and as mentioned before, I personally feel that bond very strongly. So the selection process is the same as here: marks, references, electives, interview process, and of course we have a match. And our curriculum is similar to one of the previous slides. 36 months of neurosurgery, 12 months of other surgery, 12 months of neuropathology, neuroradiology, neurology. And then this has been emphasized before. We put a huge emphasis on research in our program, and most of the residents do masters or PhDs. At the end of the training, the final in-training evaluation report has to be filled out, and the big exam, somebody referred to it before, Yahoo, we're done. This is the big exam that looms ahead of every resident in Canada, and it is a bit of a hurdle. So what are some of the training adjuncts besides the regular stuff? The first and second year residents all have a core curriculum of teaching. We have surgical skills laboratories, a neurosurgical teaching classroom curriculum of 3 hours every single week, journal clubs, rounds, and numerous visiting professors. So at the University of Toronto Division of Neurosurgery, there are 4 teaching hospitals and 27 staff. We do about 10,000 cases a year, and we have a different chairman and a different residency program committee chairman. And we feel this is very important to separate the administrative head of the division from the advocate for the residents. We feel that's important. We have 34 residents, which is the largest program in the Western world. There are 1 or 2 larger programs in the so-called developing world. So the residents are at the 4 teaching hospitals, which is 3 adult and 1 pediatric. They rotate on the other neuroscience specialties. And at any time, about 10 are in the laboratory getting a master's or PhD. There are usually 4 to 6 residents per hospital. They're only allowed to take one night in 4 call due to the resident revolution that happened about 10 years ago with unions, etc. On duty each night is a junior and senior resident, which is the preferred model by residents. And as I mentioned, they all attend 3 hours of didactic teaching every week, and they're relieved of all clinical responsibilities during that time. Just a word about fellows, because this is important. Because many of you have been fellows in Canada and other places. They're usually associated with a specialty. So for example, right now at the Toronto Western, we have 3 neuro-oncology fellows. There are about 20 at any time at the University of Toronto. They're from all over the world, and as mentioned, we've had numerous from Saudi Arabia. They work on call about 2 days per month, first call. So the last 2 slides are on the keys to resident training. And we've heard a little bit about this from previous speakers. There has to be adequate didactic teaching. There has to be adequate ambulatory care experience. There has to be operative experience with graded responsibility and a good case mix. If every case you're doing is trauma or every case you're doing is tumors, even if you do 1,000, that's inadequate training. And as mentioned before, there has to be a major opportunity for academic pursuits. Every resident has to have an opportunity and has to be strongly encouraged and supported to do original research and to write papers. We feel this is very important. Even if they come back to a place where they never get a chance to write a paper again, it makes them a better doctor, a better thinker, and a better appreciator of the literature. And we have to have a happy, safe learning environment. Happy is obvious. What does safe mean? Safe means that it's safe for them to challenge the authority gradient. A junior resident has to be able to challenge a senior resident. A senior resident has to be able to challenge a staff. These are important ingredients. They're essential ingredients to appropriate training of residents. And what are a few, 2 or 3 ethical challenges in resident training? Respectful and professional treatment of residents by staff and vice versa. This is paramount. Role modeling of good behavior. Staff role model for senior residents. Senior residents role model for junior residents. Junior residents role model for medical students. And medical students role model for residents. And residents role model for staff. I have learned much of some of my good behavior from residents. There has to be a reasonable quality of life for the residents, which means decent working hours, enough time to read, and access to social events and experiencing the culture, particularly for residents, for example, from Saudi Arabia, who come to a country like Canada. They have to get a chance to embed in the culture a little bit. And a very important thing for those programs that have fellows, the fellow must not compromise the training of the resident. And we are very clear at our place. Residents get first dibs. The fellows are there for academic pursuits, to write papers, and to supervise the residents. They're not to take away surgical cases from the residents. And this is the only slide that I could get my hands on readily of one of my many Saudi sons. This is, of course, Amro Al-Habib in a slightly different outfit than OR scrubs. We don't make every resident in Toronto play hockey, but most of the residents and the Saudi residents have been extremely game men and women. They've enjoyed embracing all of the activities that we have to offer. So this is my brief few little words on residency training. I'd like to compliment your country and your associations for the forward thinking you've done, not only by sending people to good programs all over the world, but by developing excellent training programs here. It seems to me, I've followed Saudi from a distance now for 20 years because of my relationship with residents and fellows, and it seems that your profession is on a meteoric rise, an exponential rise in terms of the quantity and quality of residents and neurosurgeons, and I really congratulate you all on what you've done with Saudi neurosurgery. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like on this occasion just to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude for all our fellow Sekar and Thurston for training our colleague there in Canada, the state. Now we go to the last end of our session. Dr. Ammar is going to talk about consensus.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, at the end of the session, the aim is not to confuse you, and also definitely is not the aim to compare one training program to other training program. It's simply the aim is to see where are we now after 25 years of starting the training program. Second and most important question, not to talk about the past, but to see where are we going. And if we can make it more clear, where should we go? It is a time to think about how to move forward from this point after 25 years. For that, we have to develop a vision for the future and for the coming 25 years. You cannot develop a vision without realizing clearly what is the current reality. Where are we now? And from that, we develop a vision and we find the path and the method and the way to go to this vision. Definitely, the situation in 1987 is not the situation in 2012. The current realities have changed, so our vision should be changed as well. So the methods and procedure and how we are going should be changed. What was right in 1987 when we started the first program is not right in 2012. 1987, we had severe shortage of the qualified neurosurgeon. We have only two at that time, Dr. Khalaf al-Bouteri and Dr. Zain al-Abidin Jamjoom. We have no central body, a Saudi commission for training or standard training. We have ambitious healthcare plans to build new hospitals, new department of neurosurgery everywhere, but no neurosurgeon. So it was mandatory for us to start a training program to graduate Saudi neurosurgeon. Now we have, yes, shortage, but we have a lot of good neurosurgeons and many good centers. So if we can put the title of this period for the future is we should invest in excellence. We have to really apply the expert code, which was presented by Dr. Maher Hassoun and the front way. We have to look for perfectionists and researchers and really qualified teachers. So we were, from 1987, we have severe shortage of neurosurgeons, decided to train and started the local training programs, and was our important aim is to graduate safe and qualified neurosurgeons. Now we have qualified neurosurgeon, we look for excellence and perfectionism, and we look for academicians and researchers and the quality of neurosurgeon, and we look more for a vision for the 25 years. Still the pillars of training program 100 years ago and today the same. Knowledge, attitude, and the skills. But the methods to obtain and the ways to obtain each one of them are different. And it varies from year to year, and that's what we go. Even in healthcare planners, talking about the quality, nice building, good equipment, cost, access to the patients, the service, but still the core of it, and the most important factor in it is the human factor, the quality of the healthcare provider. So that is the value of the training. So I believe that we have to go from now on. It's not enough to qualify a neurosurgeon, but we would like to get an excellent neurosurgeon. So we try to apply the system for talking for this program to know where we are now, according to the people for quality management, what they call it SWIT, talking about the strengths of each program, the weakness of each program, the opportunities which carries in any of this program, and the threats in each of this program, as to know in one way or another our current reality and how can we build the vision for the coming 25 years. Measuring and weighing training program is a very hard task, and it's a very professional task. It is the audit, and we are not expert in the audit, but maybe this is a job that should be done. We have just general terms about how our feeling, how it's our experience, and the people, as Dr. Shaker said, that is how to track the people. Because I think, and they said, we can measure roughly any training program about who get into the training, the opening and the ends, who get into the program, and how he proceeds through the program. But the most important, the exit. Who are the people now? They are good trained, good position, and this can give impression of that program. So if we go back to summarize what was said for pros and cons for Saudi program, it is the most popular program now and official program for Saudi Arabia. They have several centers. They have advantage of the training home, and the graduation is almost granted. This could be advantage and disadvantage. Disadvantage, more training centers needed. We need strict curriculum. We need unified standard for teaching between different hospital and dental department. As this is a summary of Dr. Abdul Hakim's slides. And also we need training for the trainers, courses, to teach the people how to teach. For the MAM University, what's supposed to be an academic and professional programs, there's definitely defect in the academic part. We need to emphasize on the research and writing the thesis. We need actually to teach how to teach and how to examine and evaluate the trainee. For training abroad, it is important. It's the most advantage that the trainee join established, well-structured program. You have good number of cases, good exposure to international culture and the international level of neurosurgery, and it is a brand name. Once you come with Western degree, that is the door of the most hospital are open for you. But there is small disadvantages for loose connection with the rapid changes in the Saudi Arabia, and in the university, home university, and the culture and social, as it was stated. And most of the program does not emphasize for our trainee special courses for them to be academician or researchers. So the final conclusion which I can come with from this, that is definitely the postgraduate training programs, all the three, did a great job in Saudi Arabia. The situation has a lot of changes if we compare through the 25 years. It is a major and great progress was made in neurosurgical training program in Saudi Arabia in these 25 years. Thanks to Saudi program, thanks to Dammam University Fellowship program, and thanks a lot for training abroad as well. We need really, and this is, I believe this is a job should be taken seriously by the Saudi Association, and so we really need to study scientifically and analyze where are we now. So I really invite, this is just an introduction for the subject, that is programs directors, the Saudi commissions, and that is the Saudi Association, to really to organize a committee or a program to really analyze where we are and what should be the vision after for us and the way to go to it in 25 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ahmed. Thank you very much.
So
any comment from the audience in this regard?
I really enjoyed the morning. I'm Abdurrahman Sabbagh, a neurosurgeon in King Fahd Medical City, who trained in Montreal for 6 years and obtained finished my residency in 2005 and did a fellowship in epilepsy and then another fellowship in pediatric neurosurgery. I finished all this and I felt that I really have the armamentarium, and I had this Canadian syndrome, as we call it in Saudi Arabia. And I must say that my first case when I arrived in King Fahd Medical City, they called me to the neonatal ICU, and I looked there and I find a case of myeloschisis. And I looked at myself, I've never even seen anything like that. Not even in books, I read about it. And I had to run and find Dr. Maqsood, and Dr. Balyan and tell them, come guys, help me out. I've never seen a case like this. So training outside, and this was really humbling for me. And I had to relearn Saudi neurosurgery here. So I think, training outside has its huge pluses, of course. Cultural, educational, skills, but training here is quite important. And I'm probably one of the advocates of people doing neurosurgery training, the residency in Saudi Arabia, because our neurosurgery is different. Our patient population is different. Doing a fellowship abroad later to improve your skills and improve even give you a taste of the culture outside is also important. And I actually I'm now currently I'm in a new post, so relating to training and scholarships in our hospital. I actually invite people from the States, from Canada, from South Africa, from wherever, from England, to come and do rotations in Saudi Arabia, to do exchange programs, because medicine here is different, neurosurgery here is different. And I close by that, and I really thank everybody for what was said this morning.
Thank you, Professor Sabbagh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really, I enjoyed the session. And thank you for all of you. And the disadvantage word, every time I hear it, I say, so how we make it advantage? I will take one part of Dr. Abdul Hakim. He said, we have to make our neurosurgery fruitful. And I must appreciate effort and pressure I put on Dr. Anisi and Dr. Ammar. Even the president, he left, I was to establish radiosurgery. And I found radiosurgery can be one of the fruitful to the young neurosurgeon and can reduce the disadvantage. And I'm very much glad that they are making a strong effort. You started your hospital, but I'm making pressure on them, and we are gaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think now.
Last one. Last question.
Last one.